The 2019 Pitt Panthers have goals of repeating as ACC Coastal Division champions, a top 25 finish, and a significant bowl victory. Fans and critics will judge the Panthers based on how they fare against these challenges laid out for them. But one game, the game, this Saturday against their biggest rival can shine a bright light on the season regardless of what happens the rest of the way. It's Pitt Penn State! That and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
Excited to get our first win under our belt last week. Obviously a big game this week. Looking forward to heading out to Happy Valley and playing a very good football team. Like I said, it's something every week, but let's hope it's 0 this week. And that's why we practice. That's why we coach. Like I said, if it was easy, coaches, we wouldn't need coaches. We just, I'll be at the swimming pool right now, hanging out, having a hot dog. We're going to jump on the bus on Friday. It's close enough to get on the bus. We don't have to go wait at an airport. We don't have to go through customs. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to empty our pockets. We jump on the bus and we go. And it's a big game. It's another game for us, but it's a big game because it's a rivalry game in state. I'm going to emphasize with our kids, you might be the last team to ever get to play this game.
Hail to Pitt. Hail to Pitt. This is the week of September 14th, and this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Vince.
And I'm Pam.
Pitt achieved their first victory of the season as the Panthers took down MAC-favored Ohio in a 20-10 victory this past Saturday at Heinz Field. Pitt is 1-1 as all eyes turn towards the middle of the state, where the Panthers will do battle with evil personified. For the 100th and maybe final time, this is what they mean when they say big noon kickoff. It's time to hate and beat Penn State. Oh, here we are. Biggest game of the year, if you ask anybody. And I'm ready. I hope you are. And the best part about it, Pam, is there's no TSA or customs you got to go through to watch this one.
No, not at all. Just jump on a bus on Friday and you're in the middle of the state. And as the week goes on, tweet at us at H2P Show and let us know your thoughts on the game, what you think's going to happen, your thoughts on Penn State, and maybe how you feel about them during this game. Please let us know.
Yes, please let us know how you really feel about Penn State. I love hearing how a Pitt fan here feels about Penn State at H2P Show. And of course, leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate it. And tell any Panther fan friend or family member or stranger, to listen to the Hail to Pitt podcast at H2P Show on everywhere. All the social medias, we're there. And we are also brought to you by Pretty Easy Podcasts. PrettyEasyPodcasts.com is where you can go to start your own podcast today. Get your own personal producer. You don't have to worry about learning any of the technical stuff behind making a podcast. You just turn your microphone, talk, and put a show together. Be creative and let all the heavy lifting get done by the people at Pretty Easy Podcasts. Go to PrettyEasyPodcasts.com to get your podcast started today. And today, full disclosure, Vince, we are T-minus, I think, a little over 2 days and change before kickoff in Crappy Valley. It is perhaps the final time. You think the final time in our lifetime that Pitt will play Penn State? Quite possibly. It's pretty much the biggest game ever, if that's the case to me.
Yeah, I mean, we may have been saying that 20 years ago, and lo and behold, here we are right now. But, it's certainly going to be the first time or the last time in a long time. No doubt about that. The biggest rivalry game for both teams. going down this Saturday, big noon kickoff. It's going to be something to see.
It is, and Pitt got that first win under their belt. They didn't have the 0-4 start that I alluded to a few weeks ago, Pam. So that's good. That didn't happen. Everybody's happy. They got the win. Now it's time to shock the world. This would be a shocker, more so than the win a few years ago, right? This would be a big one. We're going to dive right into Penn State as soon as we recap this first victory. And this first victory saw a lot of awesome things, I thought, when it came to people stepping up, people taking hold of their position and shown that they can be reliable, Vince. Most notably, those two Davises, really excited for the running backs.
Yeah. A.J. Davis, the starter once again, got the bulk of the work, but Vincent Davis, true freshman running back out of Florida. This kid made a lot of plays, a lot of nice runs. He scored a touchdown this past week. He's listed now as a co-starter running back for whatever that's worth. But you got to like the shiftiness of this guy, bringing something a little bit different to the backfield. I think he's got the ability to run inside or outside, maybe even particularly inside, which I think is going to be very important this coming week.
Yeah, I'm glad they named him a co-starter. He looked good against Ohio. And on the flip side, Sibley did not. He looked slow. He just doesn't – I mean, I know he's more of a power back, but he doesn't look good. So I'm glad they're making that shift to Vincent Davis because he's looked good so far this year, especially this past week against Ohio. I'm excited for what he can do and give a little bit of explosiveness to this offense that's lacking that.
Yeah, big playability is much needed right now, and that is developing. And the Davis, I guess twins, if you want to call them that, are showing that they're capable of some jukies, some fast twitch. But we need Sibley to step up too, because Pitt's going to need some power running. As we saw, there was a moment where it was short yardage, and they struggled against a smaller defensive line in Ohio. And then on the other side, with the defensive line for Pitt, with all the injuries and the young defensive lines coming along.
Yeah, I think so. Keyshawn Camp, defensive tackle, he's going to be out for the season, so that leaves a hole there. Jalen Twyman had a huge game this past week, 3 sacks.
Wait, that was Jalen? That wasn't Aaron Donald? It was 97. I saw it.
They work out together. Who would know?
It looked like him at times. And, him and Amir Watts holding it down there. But we need more guys in that rotation. Excellent play inside there, and he's going to need to bring it this week.
We're going to hear from Pat Narduzzi, some of what he said at the press conference about the D-line, and he's tempering his expectations. They're young, they're facing adversity. But I got to say, still, now 2 weeks in, my favorite part of the team right now. I thought they did a great job, and the linebackers also showing they could fly around, they could run around, they're quick. And I think multiple. They're deep. Pitt's got a lot of them. Chase Pine stepping up last week.
Yeah, playing some middle linebacker a little bit. Didn't see Salim Brightwell at all. So maybe that's why we're seeing that. I thought the linebackers overall have played pretty good, over pursuing a little bit. I think on some running plays, but I'll tell you something right now. And we were watching me and Pam were watching the replay of this game. You could really see, these guys shoot the gaps and shoot them fast. They can get downhill very quickly and make plays.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the defense, especially the front of this defensive group. The only issue, and we talked about it while we were watching the replay of the game, was they need to start to force some turnovers and really get that going, especially to help out the offense as well. They still have no turnovers, correct, through 2 games.
Right. Yeah, that's going to be needed, quite frankly, this week. If you're going to pull off an upset where you're a big dog the way Pitt is, you need turnovers, you need to wreak havoc, cause mistakes, and this is going to be the first time they do it if they can get it done. But the defense has been stingy, at least. And now, biggest test of the year coming up. The Ohio game, though, they were supposed to be tested. That Ohio offense, I thought, looked pretty anemic. The quarterback, Rourke, wasn't really impressive. The Pitt handled the zone options and all that. The RPOs, Vince, pretty well. They still only won by 10, but I think if you watch that game, it felt like Pitt could have won by a whole lot more. They just didn't capitalize on some opportunities.
Yeah, they outgained Ohio by almost 270 yards. So they, really controlling the game. Just didn't. There were times where they could have really, really cashed in and scored a few more points. It didn't happen. Of course, there was that dropped easy pick six.
Oh my!
And towards the end of the game. But I think the good thing about this is, they weren't. Obviously, you want to see them score more points, but the good thing is that they weren't really ever in danger of losing this game. It's not like they got on them real early, but by halftime, they really had this game in control.
Yeah. But they need to tighten it up a little bit. They have too many penalties, especially pre-snap penalties. The first play of the game was an offensive line false start, correct? It's a little sloppy there, and you're not going to upset a team when you go in as a big underdog with that many pre-snap penalties each and every week. It's just not going to happen. So they need to be a more disciplined team, especially up front there.
Yeah, Pitt was never in danger, but there was a lot of slop, and I was in danger sitting in your 2 season tickets of getting kicked out and getting you banned from Heinz Field, because I was angry a lot because of some of the slop, because of some missed opportunities. And then there was a baffling call that a lot of people are talking about Narduzzi made, and he took full responsibility for it, but obviously it was a head scratcher.
Yeah, you could say it's a bad decision. I'll take it. My fault. That's why, every week there's stuff you make a decision, and I'd say 1 out of 10 times, 1 out of 7 times you might make that decision based on what the game is and who you're playing it. 3rd and 5, we take a sack. It's like, hey, why didn't you take the fourth and 1, coach? That was dumb. So I don't know.
Does Pitt make that decision? Does Narduzzi make that decision, Vince, if it's the Penn State game and not Ohio? Taking the 4th and 1 over the 3rd and medium?
I don't know. He may still do the same thing, just to make a statement. He's not shy about, going for it on 4th and short.
It depends if you're pushing a team around, and Pitt wasn't really pushing Ohio around at that point.
At least not at that point in the game. Yeah.
So that's what was odd to me, but no harm, no foul. A lot of penalties, though, like we said, there were, 10 penalties?
Yeah.
But the defense, as we said, Pam, looked tough. I'm super high on the defensive line already. How about you? Are you tempering expectations, or are you super duper high already on a group that's faced 2 huge injuries?
No, I'm not tempering expectations, which is rare for me. I'm usually the person trying to keep everything in check around here, but I'm super hyped about this offensive line. Shout out to Pat Bostic, who on our show said this was going to be the best unit of this team, and It's proven right. I've been really impressed, not only with how they've held, they held Virginia in check, relatively speaking, held Ohio, but just how they look. They look like they are getting that pressure up front, and they're there stopping the run. And that's something that this team has lacked, and in the past has put too much pressure on the back end of the defense. So the guys in the back end, like Paris Ford and DeMar Hamlin, can kind of not relax, but they can not fear that they're not going to have enough time. The front line is giving them plenty of time up here. So
while we could get super duper hype for Aaron Donald Jr. and the TJ Dragon, Pat Narduzzi, not quite as hyped just yet, but you can never, as a coach, you can't get too high or too low. Here's what Narduzzi said when asked about the defensive line's performance under the gun so far with injuries.
It's not what it was, but it's building into something. Devin Danielson, I was real impressed with how he played. I think it'll get better. We got some young guys in there that are just playing their first games. I think that's something you have to look at, and it's not what we wanted to be. It's not where we wanted to be, but Coach Partridge done a nice job, and we'll just continue to get better every week, I think, with those young guys playing for us.
I think we could guarantee they're going to get better. That group looking good. Kenny Pickett looking all right. 300-yard day. Am I looking at this stat sheet right, Vince? Kenny Pickett threw for over 200 yards? Not just 2, but 300 yards?
Yeah. Believe it or not, it didn't really feel like it. I guess during the
not
game,
at all.
Some shaky passes. I thought a couple of times where he didn't have as much zip on it as I would have liked to see. But Alan, I got to ask your opinion on this. To me, it looked like whenever he had, was decisive and stepped up and made a throw, he was very accurate. I thought a huge difference from the previous game.
Huge difference. Looked confident. That's why Kenny Pickett looked confident when he was throwing. He wasn't putting too much zip. He forced a couple early on. The beginning of the game, definitely not as good as he got. He got into the groove. The drops didn't help. Kenny Pickett in that situation. He could add maybe a lot more yards. But he was utilizing more guys too, and he wasn't forcing anything. I mean, throwing to the tight end when they were open, throwing to the crossing routes when those were open, even if there were drops before, and being fairly accurate a couple times down the field, not trying to do too much, not panicking under pressure either too much. Kenny Pickett settled in. Still lots of work to do, obviously, but much improvement over week one for me when it came to Kenny Pickett. And you see by the result, Pitt wins. Pitt probably, Pam, going to go as Kenny Pickett goes this entire season.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. If Pitt put up 40 points as opposed to 20, would you feel more confident going into this week, or did you see enough out of the offense to feel better than after week one?
I saw enough to feel better. I don't think it makes I would have liked to see them run the ball in the first half a little bit better. But, I kind of saw, it's not like it was a night and day difference, and I don't know if scoring 40 points with the way they were playing would have made much difference.
Yeah, I will say I was thinking about both of you during the first half when it came to, because we had a conversation about, the game plan last week and throwing too much. I did not feel that way after the UVA game. Definitely felt that way after the first half of the Ohio game. A little too much thrown against a team that, the Davis and Davis were ready. You could see it. They had the jukies going. They had the legs. They looked like they were just going to outrun players on Ohio's defense. They were able to make guys miss, and they just weren't going to them. And eventually they do, and those guys kind of, took over, controlled the clock. At the end, they squeezed the life out of the clock. But I thought, the first half, what you two hit it. What you were saying about the UVA game, you could apply that more so, I think, to the Ohio game. The first half of the Ohio game when it came to the game plan.
Yeah. It seemed like, they're throwing too much, but then, they finally got settled down, got a little bit more balanced. And Alan, what I want to touch on is he said they squeezed the clock at the end of the game. And, they ran out the last 5 or 6 minutes just running the ball. And I think that is absolutely huge. When you have a lead like that and you got the ball and the other team knows you're going to run, or they know whatever you're going to do, and you're able to just do it effectively and keep the clock going, extend drives. That's huge.
It was amazing. I could not believe Ohio wasn't calling timeout. Were they that gassed? Were they that beat up? Was Pitt's offensive line that good, Pam, that Ohio didn't even – they left – how many – I think they left 2, maybe all 3 of their timeouts on the clock by the end of the game. I think actually it was 2. They had 2 left, and they didn't even use them. They just said, screw this. We're not stopping them. We're done.
Yeah, and they were able to squeeze the clock like we talked about. And prior to after the UVA game, our concern was that they threw too much initially, especially starting out. But it's great to see that this team does have the capability of being able to run when they absolutely need to, when they have that clock. But it was just the insistence on the run and the pass that really hurt this team.
Yeah, it was an interesting game because Pitt did not win by that much. They covered. But they did not, they didn't get the 40 points on the board. I don't think it would have mattered. Either way, Pitt is going to have to take, I think, a giant leap from the Ohio game to win this week against Penn State. Even if there was 40 points scored, it was a 40-10 win. It would have been the same big leap needed because this is just a different kind of test that they're facing this week, Vince.
Yeah, this is going to be a big challenge, a big step up in class from Ohio, no doubt. But one thing we'll say, and we'll probably get into this here, is Pitt is battle tested. I will say, they played a very good Virginia club in the first game, and this Ohio team, Pitt was able to soundly beat them, but they're not going to be any pushover throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, as opposed to Penn State's first two games. First game, they crushed University of Idaho, scoring 79 points. And then they played University of Buffalo, which isn't a great team, better than Idaho. They were able to win 45-13. They struggled a little in the first half and then kind of pulled away in that one. So Pitt is a lot more battle tested because Ohio is better than either one of those teams.
Yes.
As well, let alone the matchup they had against Virginia. So I'm a big believer in when teams are battle tested, it works out better when they're going against a bigger opponent than a team that walks in not battle tested. I believe in playing a strong strength of schedule as well. So I think Pitt definitely.
Well, you did say, Penn State has faced some adversity though. They were, losing at the half to this Buffalo team, University of Buffalo, and Buffalo did outgain them in this game by a total of 429 yards to 357 yards. So it is kind of strange to see, Penn State won big on the scoreboard at the end of the game, but that first half, that was no joke. They were in a dogfight.
How do you get that many yards and only come up with 13 points, Buffalo? Come on. I think, but that's true. Penn State, they fought back and they were probably kicking themselves that they gave up that many yards to Buffalo. Pitt, I think, there's nothing statistically that stands out from, I think, either the Ohio or UVA game that makes Pitt look like, they're weak anywhere. They're susceptible, but I think Pitt has shown that they can they could quell they could stop bleeding, they could prevent bleeding. Penn State shows that they can bleed. They can give up a ton of yards. There's a big opportunity there for Pitt's offense. And I think also, of course, in the eternal battle for conference supremacy, that UVA game week 1, hopefully, Pam, that says a lot about the ACC. Hopefully the ACC is legitimately that competitive and on the level or better than the Big Ten. And we see Pitt, come into this game a little grizzled and ready for Penn State, who is a 17-point favorite we're talking about here. And a team that put up 79 points in a game is no joke. I don't care if they played a team from a state where it's the population of Idaho, half of Pittsburgh. I don't know how many people live there, but five, maybe. Sean Clifford, the quarterback, though, his first real test more than anybody, I think we could say, and another PSU running quarterback who, did he lead them in rushing in both of these games, or at least last week, Vince?
Last week he did 51 yards on the ground against Buffalo for Clifford. It didn't have to run as much in their first game against Idaho. He threw for some big yards, and a lot of their running backs got the ball there. It seemed like everybody got in that game. But yeah, and he had a huge run against Buffalo that really helped, put them ahead. So that's something that we got to be accounted for here. Maybe not a burner, but a bigger frame that could run through people.
Yeah, and they were able to contain Bryce Perkins, which I think for a running quarterback is probably one of their biggest challenges of the year.
And this guy's no Bryce Perkins, Pam, for sure.
Right, no, not at all, especially on the ground. And then Rourke was supposed to be a running quarterback. I mean, they did talk a lot and brought a doctor on about how he had strep throat. So
Allegedly.
So, but I was very, very well impressed on how they were able to contain Perkins. So I think that bodes well for them being able to contain Clifford in this game, especially when he's scrambling. And if the back end of the defense is able to provide coverage, hopefully they can contain him up front. But I think you hinted, we've been talking around what I think the biggest key for Pitt is this week. You talked about how the Penn State defense gave up so many yards to Buffalo. So they prove they can bend, but maybe they don't break. When Pitt is in that red zone, they have to get 3 or 7 as opposed to 3. They cannot let up, just score 3 points. They have to get that 7, or in some cases they have to get 3. They can't walk away with 0 when they flip the field. They have to do that because this Penn State defense so far, I mean, especially against Buffalo, has proven they'll let up the yards, but you have to score those points when you have the opportunity.
Yeah, kicking is for losers, as some say. But I will say this. I think, through the first 2 games, Pitt's defense has demonstrated they are a top defense here. And so I don't think we're really in jeopardy of giving up tons of points. I don't think this game is going to turn into a shootout by any stretch. So, yes, if Pitt gets down in the red zone, they got to capitalize. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, if they're not scoring every time either, I don't think they're going to be in danger of getting behind in this game by too much.
So in terms
of the defense will keep them in it.
So in terms of threats from Penn State, I guess we're looking at Hamler or Ricky Slade as the most dangerous guys, and you don't think Penn State is going to be able to put up the kind of points they've put up the last 2 years against Pitt?
I don't think so. And specifically, if you look at the first game of the season last year, or the game last year in the first half, I should say, Penn State did not score that many points. It was only leading by a little bit at halftime. I think they have like around 14. I can't remember exactly what the score was, but you could even argue Pitt outplayed them there. If it wasn't for some terrible special teams gaffes, Pitt probably would have been leading at the half there. So I think Pitt's defense is going to be able to contain these guys for the most part, but yeah, you talked about KJ Hamler. This guy is a tremendous wide receiver, especially from that slot position. And I think that in terms of Penn State's offense, I think that's what I'm most concerned about, because it seems like we always have trouble containing some of these slot receivers. And it could be just the nature of this defensive scheme. And so I'm not quite sure who's going to be guarding this guy or what they plan on doing to stop him, but they got to do something.
Yeah, that dude, KJ Hamler, averaging over 25 yards a catch. Big playability there. Penn State really hasn't found their go-to back yet. They've got a bunch of guys with carries. Devin Ford is seemingly their home run hitter. He's got the most yards for a running back on their team, but not the most carries. I guess that would go to Journey Brown. So they're still shuffling through their offense to figure out their playmakers. And Pitt has, I think, the most equipped defense so far they've had when it comes to just man for man with Penn State's offense, which has been very good the past few years. And then we're also talking about a Pitt offense that is going to, I'm telling you, they've had the opportunities already. They're going to have them again. Guys open, throws that are there for Kenny Pickett to make, throws that Kenny Pickett will make. And I think this is going to come down to catching the dang old ball, Pam. Too many drops, and the drops, seriously, we would be talking about a way closer line in Vegas for sure if Pitt would have just caught some balls in these first 2 games.
Yeah, and it seems to be a problem with both teams in the Southside facility catching the ball. But let me ask you this. I mean, looking at the offense, Penn State has a very strong front 7. Does that concern you with Pitt's offensive line? When Virginia started to pressure, that's when Pickett started to be a little erratic. They need to have like a quick read there, or maybe bring in an extra blocker or something. I mean, the fullback Rashad Wheeler's hurt. We're not sure about him. I'm just a little concerned about the offensive line. And Pickett, when he gets pressured, he's proven time and time again, that's when he gets like very jittery.
Yeah, Alan, I'd like to ask you this, what you would do scheme-wise in this situation, because Penn State, I think the strength of their defense, from what I could see, is on the edge. Shaka Toney and Matos on the outside at end, and then Micah Parsons and Braun, they're outside linebackers, very aggressive, long, athletic guys. What do you do to combat that? Is that something that you would you got to do some screen passes, some misdirection? How do you slow these guys down?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Whipple comes up with, and hopefully he's been kind of basic so far. Maybe that's why we've seen a lot of the throwing that he's had and not a whole lot of creativity in the run game. So let's hope for some creativity in the run game, because I think Pitt's going to have to rely heavily on AJ and Vince Davis in this game to really set up Kenny Pickett, because in order to avoid getting rushed, you're going to need some play action in there. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, Alan, I guess you and Pam, I want to ask you both this question. The first game against Virginia, Pitt could not handle the blitzing now from Virginia. Now that was out of a 3-4 scheme, so it's a little bit different, but they could not handle it. Specifically, some of the outside offensive linemen. We got to do something different here. We can't have a repeat of that performance for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's bringing in an extra blocker or just having a quick option. Maybe it's a quick wheel or someone quick in the slot, or maybe like Will Gregg staying back real quick in the middle there open. They need to have that quick option for Pickett, and he needs to know what his quick option is. But at the same time, he can't force it there. He's just got to throw it out of bounds if he gets too much. Tends, when he gets pressured, this happened against Virginia, he tends to make those really bad throws that are basically to the other team, and you're like, what are you doing? So he needs that quick option, but he also has to be comfortable throwing it out of bounds or calling out of it, audible and out of it if possible.
And before we get to you, Alan, it's interesting you bring that up. As of this live on tape podcast, I was listening to Pat Narduzzi's radio show, and Pat Bostic was on, and he presented a stat that he had from Pro Football Focus saying that when Kenny Pickett gets rid of the ball in 2.6 seconds or less, he has, in that amount of time, he has the 9th best QB rating in the entire country.
I believe it.
I know why they picked 2.6. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it goes with what you're saying that, if the decision-making is there and decisive, he's capable of delivering a good ball.
Yeah, I think so. But also if Mark Whipple gives him the chance, puts him in those situations and calls those plays and doesn't have 6-yard drops and throw the ball deep and Kenny Pickett overthrows it or gets sacked. And also if guys catch the ball. Kenny Pickett has been put in those quick passing situations. They've called those plays and guys have dropped the ball in the first 2 weeks. So they're going to call those plays. I think they've set up a passing attack that, we've seen it. That's what Pitt's going to do when it comes to the passing game. In terms of creativity, I think we haven't seen anything when it comes to incorporating play fakes or Valik Carter or guys like that in the slot or in motion stuff. That's, I think, where we're going to see this week is a little bit more creativity, using guys to use speed to get around the edge guys to beat them. Hopefully, but that's going to be tough. So Kenny Pickett, the 2.6 seconds. I mean, why that number? I just say it's, you got to take what the defense gives you. And so far in the situations where Pitt they've failed in terms of executing, a lot. And that's what they've got to clean up against Penn State.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that's going to be huge. The execution has got to be there. We're talking about making some quick passes, to kind of slow down a rush, but at the same time, I think that big play has to be there because I think this defense from Penn State's too tough to just dink and dunk the whole way down the field. I'm not incredibly confident in that. We saw it. We talked about it a lot from the first game. Guys like Maurice French getting deep and behind the defense, but Pickett just couldn't hit him. That's got to change here. And one other, maybe what we got to do, and talked about quick passes, and I think could be a big play, is something like a bubble screen. And I don't really care who it's to, but just to slow down those rushers.
Well, Maurice French had a big play against Ohio, and it was a quick pass, and then he was able to create and go. And as opposed to getting him deep, I like those quicker options better.
What kind of personnel do you think they're going to go offensively the majority of this game?
That's a good question. I mean,
you spread wide if you're so worried about that front seven. Is Whipple going to have, a fullback back there, and are they just going to go pound them right in the, go right at them to free up some play fakes, or are they going to just keep doing what they're doing a lot, where they've got the one tight end there? And I'm interested to see if they change it up.
I actually could see them occasionally going wide and putting Vincent Davis in a receiver position, because he does have that ability to make plays, and he could be that quick bubble screen option.
Oh, okay.
I could see them doing that a few times. I don't see them straying too much from what they've been doing, but I do see them going wide a bunch, like maybe 5 wide, occasionally using a running back back there, maybe using some motion to mix it up as opposed to pounding it.
Could we see more? Ahead, Alan. Could we see more tight end? I mean, those guys they were open at least last week, and I think you've got 2 guys who appeared to be able to get some yards after the catch, some big guys who, and if they catch the ball, could be really dangerous in this game for Pitt.
Yeah, they're either getting open or nobody's covering them. One of the two, but either way, that's a good situation that the guys are at least getting open. We're talking a lot about, this outside rush for Penn State. So I will throw out, I think this should at least be considered to see if you could do it, is our good old fashioned just running straight and just ponding it right into the heart of their defense, which could be the more weaker part. I'm very concerned about running outside here. I don't think that we have maybe the pulling guards capable and to match up with that kind of athleticism on the outside. And I think if we're going to have success running the ball, I think it's going to be running just straight at them.
I will say, I'm hoping that's a possibility, but so far, even with Jimmy Morrissey right there in the middle, Pitt's offensive line does not look as vicious as they have in the past couple of years. They don't look as physically dominant. And I don't know if they're capable of that. Are they just going through growing pains, or is Pitt's offensive line just not that kind of offensive line anymore?
At least not right now. I think they're more athletic than what they had last year for sure. And I think that the technique is probably there, and in time they'll be better pass blocking. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But maybe they're not mature enough to just go out there and just push people around. I'm not sure yet.
Can't tippy-toe in a game like this. You have to. I mean, if Pitt's offensive line is going to play mean at all this season, it's going to be this game. And let's also hope no penalties. You can't let the emotion of 100 matchups and the final time anybody gets to play this team, overwhelm you. You gotta be focused but fired up at the same time. It's a fine line if you're a player. Me, I'm gonna lose my absolute skull. I'm gonna just go nuts. I'm gonna be going crazy. This is the biggest thing ever, and it could be the last time in our lifetime we see Pitt play Penn State. WVU's coming back, and that's a different kind of hatred. I think there's more respect there. This is just really, oh man, I just don't like it. I don't like that school. I don't like their fans. It was the best feeling in the world seeing James Conner and Pitt defeat them in that first game after so many years off. And if they could beat them the last game before so many years off, it might be even sweeter. This is going to be very special. And I'm going to be sweating, yelling. My in-laws are in town, or future in-laws are in town, so I want to apologize to them beforehand for all the bad things I say about Penn State, which I'm surprised I haven't said on this show yet, Pam. Are you proud of me?
I'm proud of both of you, actually. This was a reason that I had to make sure I had to move some scheduling around to make sure to be here to keep both of you in line. I mean, I don't like them either. But I don't feel it's necessary to say some things that both of you have said off pod about them, especially in a more professional setting. I don't like them, and I think Pitt needs to let the play speak for that. Let me share a little story. Last night, or a few nights ago, we were out to dinner with some family, and we were standing in the parking lot just BSing after dinner, and Vince had a Pitt polo on from work. It said Pitt, and this Jagoff walked by hyping up Penn State, and I was very proud of Vince for not going after him. So let the play on the play on the field do the talking this week.
Vince, is this hatred for Penn State different from the hatred for West Virginia for you, and is it more intense?
Yeah, it's way more intense. People from West Virginia, they're just hillbillies. They can't help themselves. That's just who they are. But they're tough, and you got to respect them for that. Penn State and their fans are just, the story that you said summed it up perfectly, Pam. They're just, very arrogant people, and hopefully, we could get this victory here, and it'll even the series, here for the last time 2-2. Even though they probably won't admit it. Let
me ask you guys a question. What do you think of James Franklin's comments this week about possibly exploring some neutral field options? Was that we don't want to have to play someone other than Idaho
no,
in the non-conference?
Not
why,
at all.
Why would they do neutral field? Just do home and home.
He doesn't. He's just saying that. Just to,
what neutral field?
It makes no sense.
If you play in Philadelphia, that's not neutral. If you play at Heinz Field, obviously that's not neutral. So where are you going to play this?
Johnstown.
Breezewood?
Breezewood.
I don't know. That's what I don't understand.
He's just blowing smoke.
I know he's blowing smoke, but I just thought I'd raise it. Where are you going to play, in Youngstown, Ohio? Let's get out of the state? I don't get it. I didn't get that neutral field comment. We saw this weekend when LSU played Texas. I mean, they're not historic rivals, but two great programs going after it. How great that can be. And it's just a shame. I mean, this is a bigger rivalry than that, but when you have two great programs going after, you get good games, and the rivalry can continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a shame that this is the last one. I know some people are actually happy it's over. Which is odd to me. I am all about in-state rival. I've heard Pitt people say it. I've heard Penn State people say it. I don't know if they're just drinking Franklin Kool-Aid or what, or they're just tired of Penn State fans. But there are people who are relieved, which is absurd to me, because if you are schools this large in any state in the union, you should be playing each other. And the only states that should have excuses for their bigger universities maybe not playing each other are the states of California, Florida, and Texas, because those are so dang big and they have different conferences within those states that, sometimes it won't work out every single year, but they even manage it better than we do here in Pennsylvania, where the two biggest universities are not even going to be playing each other for who knows how long after Saturday.
Well, and Penn State and Temple aren't playing each other either. They did play each other for a number of years, and then we remember a few years ago Temple beat them.
Well, yeah, they did play, and it was usually on a 3-for-1 kind of deal.
Mm-hmm, but the one time they went to, it was at the Link, I believe. Penn State beat them. I mean, Temple beat them. Yeah,
they're afraid of this kind of competition, I guess is what I'll say. And, I'll get heat on it and saying they beat them the past couple of years. Well, it's still a hard fought rivalry game, regardless of what anybody wants to say. It's going to be a tough game that you got to be concerned about. And they're outside of, the state of Pennsylvania. They're not going to get much respect for winning that game. So the risk of losing is just too great. It's not worth the risk. It's better to just play a nobody.
Well, because look at the year Pitt beat them.
Yeah,
they were up there in contention.
Yeah,
right.
They were. If they would have won, there's a good chance they would have made the playoff.
Yeah,
but they didn't.
And they did not. Remember that forever. But also, they play in a dumb conference where it's a conference full of excuses and crying and whining. And when they've got all that going on within their own conference, it's easy to see why Penn State doesn't want any after this year. And hopefully Pitt can leave them with a bad taste in their mouth. I'm not going to predict this one. I'm just going to say hail to Pitt, and we got this. I don't want to. I can't bring myself to think logically right now, Pam. So I'm just going to say we got this. Either way, it's going to be much better than last year's game.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's all sit out on a prediction and just hope for the best, because it can't get any worse than last year's game. Last year's was horrific, both the weather, the cold in September, and just the product on the field was an absolute disaster. So I do think it's going to be a very, very close game, and that's why Pitt needs to keep it tight with, like you called it, the Ohio game, some slop out there. They need to tighten up the penalties and those stupid mental mistakes, and they'll be okay.
Yeah, I'll go back to that first half. There were some horrible special teams disasters and just some, couple crucial plays where they didn't convert. And then in the second half, immediately losing the field position battle. And I don't often say, it hasn't been often we've been able to say that a Pat Narduzzi team quit in a game. But I feel like that last year was one of the few times in the second half where that's actually happened. And I don't think we'll see that again. And I think the Panthers are going to come out really fired up and take it to them right from the jump.
Punch him in the mouth. And, hey, you can't hold anything back. Last time Pitt plays Penn State for the foreseeable future, big noon kickoff. I'm so ready. I can't even contain the hype anymore. So maybe we should move on to the rest of the show, Pam, before I do say something I'm going to regret. And maybe we could go into what other people are saying about it, because I've said enough before I start getting real mean.
Yeah. We're if you think we're bad, people around the city are even worse, and I can't wait to find out what they're saying.
Another Saturday coming, and the Panthers are playing. Trying to find out what the Panthers are saying.
Boy, I'll tell you, I hate Penn State fans so much. I'd rather leave downtown heading towards the Squirrel Hill Tunnel at 4:00 on a Friday than talk to a Penn State fan.
Oh, I'd rather just drink out of the Mon rather than eat at one of them dumps down there on that Atherton Avenue thing they got there. All them places are so gross. I'm telling you, I'll go drink here out of the bar toilet before I go eat in one of them places.
Oh, that's nothing. I'd rather have strep throat and be thrown in a Jagger bush before I sit in that erector set they call stadium.
Oh, that's dangerous sitting in there. I'm not even going, I'm sitting here, right here. I'm this very bar stool watching. And you know what? I think I'd rather talk to a politician than listen to when them Penn State fans talk about attendance and success with honor and Joe Pa and all that. At least a politician might be a little honest compared to them.
Hail to Pitt.
What the Panthers are saying.
So that's what the Yinzers are saying. Wise man once said, if you have hate in your heart, let it out. And that's what this week's all about. But there is some other big stuff happening around the country in the college football world, Alan, and we're going to get right to it here.
Oh, college football! Don't you dare be sour. And can we all agree that the Trojans are back? Who wants to kiss the Trojan? Yes, fight on. USC looking real tough, real mean, real good, even with a freshman quarterback. I'm so hyped for the Trojans. That's what I'm looking forward to the most outside of Pitt, Penn State.
They got to keep it up because Lynn Swan's no longer the athletic director, and Clay Helton every week seems to be fighting for his job. But USC has been impressive with the freshman quarterback. They do have a tough test against BYU this week.
Yeah, Southern Cal favored by 4 in this game right now at the Westgate. I like Southern Cal here, although I'm not as impressed of that win over Stanford because Stanford's quarterback, KJ Costello, did not play in that game. And BYU, had a big overtime victory over Tennessee. Now they're coming back across the country. I think it's a letdown game for them, but so I think Southern Cal could come out with a victory here. But I'm still holding my my expectations.
Kadon Slovis. Yeah, SC didn't play with their starting quarterback either, Vince, and they look good. And I'm hoping for the Pac-12's sake, USC can and Clay Helton's can keep this going. That's fun. That's fun to keep an eye on. But in the ACC, where if it means more in the SEC, then it means the most in the ACC, where conference games don't even count towards your record.
Yeah, this is something rather unique. Wake Forest taking on North Carolina in a non-conference game between conference opponents. They're on opposite sides, opposite divisions in the conference. Two schools in the same state. And they don't play each other every year because of the crossover opponents. North Carolina, I believe, plays North Carolina State. That's their main crossover opponent. Unlike Pitt and Penn State, here, two schools that are in the same state said, we don't even care if the conference won't schedule us. We're going to just do it ourselves.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the opposite.
Wake Forest is a 3-point favorite against North Carolina.
Both teams are unbeaten.
Yeah, Mac Brown, some good wins.
What a story! What a story, Mac Brown coming out of retirement.
Alan, you didn't think Mac Brown was going to be doing very much this year, but I'm still nervous.
I'm still nervous. I picked Pitt to beat North Carolina. I said definitively on this podcast, this is going to be the year. Now with Mac Brown back, I'm not sure. North Carolina has a freshman quarterback too, who's done really well, very impressive. So I actually think, despite the fact that this is a conference but not a non-conference game or a non-conference game, it's very confusing.
Should this even be allowed?
Yeah, I love it. Two teams that want to play each other, let them play.
Let them play and let Mac dance. I'm very scared of North Carolina right now. What a story that is. That's one of the another fun story in college football, just like the USC Helton watch, Mac Brown doing his thing, and then of course the baddest team in all of the land, Clemson, taking on Syracuse. Some say that's their kryptonite. I highly doubt that'll be the case this week, Vince.
Yeah, Syracuse has not been good.
They got that Maryland game. I was so disappointed. I mean, they struggled against Liberty. Hugh Freeze coached from a hospital bed in the press box or something up in the sky. And then they got blown out by Maryland. And I'm a big Dino Babers fan, but I'm disappointed. I think Clemson is going to go into the Carrier Dome and just smoke them.
Yeah, it's a Saturday night primetime game, the first time in a long time there, and it just does not look good for Syracuse. It looks like they're going to get blown out.
And just a real quick production note, shout out the Pretty Easy podcast crew deleted me saying Texas A&M would win last week, right? That didn't make the episode, did it? Was that actually in the episode? I hope not.
I think it is.
Damn it.
I definitely think it is, where you were very confident that A&M, because before that you were perfect in college football picks. So I think you only have one loss, so we let that slide.
Yeah, it was only one. Forget about that. How about Florida's one loss to Kentucky in like a million years? Are they going to lose again to the Wildcats? That rematch is going to be exciting. UK lost tons of players, so I don't think anybody expects them to do it again this year. But if it happened, that would be the biggest shame to the Florida Gators. I think people would get fired if that happened again this year.
Well, isn't Kentucky's quarterback hurt? Yeah. And I'm not a big Felipe Franks guy. I don't think he's going to be he just hasn't looked that great. But I think Florida's defense, without Kentucky's quarterback, even with them, I think Florida's defense may carry them here. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game.
Yeah.
Very low scoring.
Under the total, you're saying.
Yeah, I don't even know what the total
50
is.
Points.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I would probably do under. I just think Florida's defense is that nasty, and they can't get anything going offensively, but Kentucky is just struggling, especially without their starter.
And the last game here on our list of games to watch, Vince, looks like the Iowa State game. Hawkeyes -2. It's supposed to be a good year for both teams, right?
Yeah. And Pam, this is your game here. College game day is going to be in town. First time ever in Ames, Iowa, for the host Iowa State. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of feel-good stories talked about on this. At the college game day is probably going to be more exciting than the actual game for this one.
Well, Iowa State has those two really good defensive linemen, so that could be really
that's I'm picking Iowa State in this game. I can't believe Iowa is this game open to run a pick 'em, and I guess some sharps are on Iowa here. I just don't see it.
Well, I also think Iowa State in their first game against Northern Iowa looked very bad. They had to go to 1 or 2 overtimes to win. So I think that still is a little tough for people to swallow there. And their offense isn't – Iowa State has, under Matt Campbell, has made a commitment to defense in the Big 12, something that's rare. But that's where they're going to get their bread and butter here.
They got an outstanding linebacking crew as well. And they had a whole week off last week to prepare. So they are going to be fired up for this game. I think they're going to win it.
Yeah, so with a week where there are no, huge top 25 showdowns, it leaves all the room for Pitt to steal the spotlight when it comes to college football on a national level, Vince and Pam. This is not the official Big Noon Kickoff, but this is the Big Noon Kickoff. It's all on the Panthers this week. They're taking over. The college football universe will be talking about Pat Narduzzi this week. Let's get it.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Big Noon Kickoffs and hopefully a big upset.
Shock the world.
Shock it, baby. All right, I'm ready. We got college football set up, and of course, Pitt Penn State is all ready to go. So hopefully you're ready. Hopefully you're hyped, Pitt fans, and let us know your predictions for the game if you could stomach to make one. We kind of couldn't. We're just hyped and feel good for Pitt. Better than we did, I think, going into last year's game. Last time, 100th time, and maybe last time, at H2P Show on Twitter and Instagram. Holler at us anytime there, and we will get the conversation rolling all week long. And, of course, we'll be back next week, so make sure you subscribe to the show if you haven't already on any podcast platform. All right, all my notes here are checked off. I'm ready to... I'm gonna yell some things that I shouldn't say on the microphone as soon as I turn mine off. So I'm just gonna leave it at Hail to Pitt!
Hail to Pitt!
Hail to Pitt!
Beat Penn State!
Living in your